NFL draft conversation, keeping it going with the combine in the rear view mirror. Lots of different ways to pick this apart. We were discussing some of the 40 times, some of the athleticism scores that we saw from across the board. Want to start with just kind of playing the hits here. Danny, if you believe, and I believe most of us do, that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are your top two quarterbacks, with all the measurements and workouts in the rear view, who do you think is QB3?
So I have a Jackson Dart. I actually had the gap between I had Jackson Dart closer to Shedeur Sanders than Shedeur is to Cam Ward. Like, I think Cam, and I know they've been pitched as these guys are neck and neck. I think Cam Ward is separated. I think he's the better quarterback. I think he's the one that's clearly going to, there's talks about him going number one. And then I think there's a pretty good drop between Shedeur, who I think is okay. But I've been really impressed with Jackson Dart, everything he's done up to this point. So I had him. I'm sticking with him. I know Tyler Shuck impressed at the combine, but the injuries for me are just a massive concern. And like, for me, I'd be like, man, good luck to you. Like, go get him. But it's a game that you have to be able to play. And he has not been able to stay healthy anywhere he's been along the road. When he is, he could absolutely wow you. And like, again, I think it's all relative. If you're talking about a 4th, 5th round pick, sure, why not? We'll take a flyer. But when you're talking about closing that gap to QB3, which could be potentially late first round, I still think Jackson Dart's the only guy I would consider taking late first round.
I think Tyler Shuck is the one who has more plausible starter upside due to the physical tools. You watch him throw, and I know it was just NFL Network, but I think the ball comes off his hand differently than it does the rest of those guys. And it's very helpful to have that setting where you can stack guys back to back to back. You're like, oh, okay, like that velocity is different. Even if you don't have mile an hour numbers, like that velocity just looks different. The way he has to load up and throw with his entire body as opposed to just being able to flick it. Like that, those are potential differentiating factors in the NFL, as Danny can tell you. Like the ability to just get it out quick without having to load up into it is pretty huge. I don't hate Dart, obviously. I agree. It's Cam, pretty big drop off to everybody else. I think Shedeur will be a starter, but I think Shuck's my 3.
What? How about that athleticism score, Tom?
I was very surprised to see Tyler Shuck running that fast. Like, I mean, you knew he was a good prospect coming out of high school, so you knew that there was an athlete in there, but I did not think he was going to run a 4.6. I was pretty surprised by it. He had the excellent broad jump. I think he had a good combine. I think he certainly helped his case. He's still not my QB3, though. My QB3 is Kyle McCord. Has been, will be, that's not going to change. I just think that arm-wise and all that other stuff, yeah, Kyle McCord had a terrible game against Pitt. He has bad moments, but every single one of these guys has terrible games and bad moments because there is no surefire, no doubt QB in this class. But I just think size and traits-wise, Kyle McCord is my QB3.
He's my QB 3rd round.
McCord.
And I probably would rather, if you said you have to, Jackson Dart's on the board, but he's going to be gone if you don't get him at 29 in the first round, I would say I'll take Kyle McCord in the 3rd round all day long. Like, I would rather have that risk reward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys buy the Jackson Dart first round stuff? Like you think it's going to happen?
I think it can happen because that's just how things work with quarterbacks. I don't know that it will. There's so many. It's hard to know. We won't know until closer to draft time, but there's not a lot of teams, I feel like, towards the back of the draft who are going to be looking to take a quarterback. And I sure as hell don't see Jackson Dart going in like the top 10.
But I like him better than, and I was very against the pick at the time, and people said he was going to be a top 5 pick, was Will Levis. I like him way better than Will Levis coming out of Kentucky. And I thought Will Levis would he go first pick in the 2nd round?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're comparing it to that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay if Jackson Dart got taken ahead of that.
To kind of throw this to college for a second, Ole Miss had 11 players invited to the combine. They might have a first-round quarterback, and they failed to make the playoff.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And Kyle McCord goes, to Syracuse, leads the country in passing, and has a 10-win season when I'm going to guess they don't have as many players.
We will get into that especially. We need to reach out to Bill. Bill Connolly recently released his returning production numbers, and Ole Miss is a yikes right now. Last year was an all-in year, and we get to see that with the 11 players in the combine. Who stood out? Like, who are some players that you think really helped themselves at the combine? Yeah,
there were a bunch.
Running.
Yeah.
How about Amarion Hampton and Bashal Tootin? A couple ACC running backs right there. I know Tootin runs the 4.3 something.
But I think they were already kind of high.
They
If
were.
you watch AC ball, you know Tootin is scooting.
Yeah, that's right. But like,
we talked about it last week when we were talking about guys we thought would run fast the 40s. Tootin's the guy I brought up. Like, I don't think he did anything that really shocked anybody at the combine. I think Hampton and Tootin were already rated high after the Ashton Genty thing. I think they were in that kind of Caleb Johnson second tier area.
Okay, and they maybe then only
they solidified
that spot that they were good. If once Genty goes off the board, then the conversation goes to them. What about for wide receivers? Both Iowa State guys, Higgins and Noel, were good.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of those guys had excellent combines. This is just separate though. It always amuses me during combine weekend watching the NFL guys discover these college players. Like, oh, look out for this guy. He's a real sleeper. And it's like he played 50 games in his career and has over 3,500 receiving yards. Everybody knows who he is already. Just because you weren't watching doesn't mean you didn't.
Yeah. Higgins and Noel were both 1,000-yard receivers this past season for Iowa State.
But I think
they played for the Big 12 title.
They both had great combines. I think as far as guys who truly helped themselves, maybe is like increasing their draft stock. I think Missouri tackle Armand Membu might be the first tackle taken in the draft now after what happened at the combine. So I think that's somebody who had a huge weekend. I think also Arkansas's Landon Jackson, I think, had a very good weekend. And now he's kind of somebody who I think could end up sneaking into the first round. And then I would say guys like Malachi Starks is still my favorite safety, but he didn't have a great combine. But I still think as far as playing football, he's the better football player. But Nick Amanwari from South Carolina just had ridiculous numbers. So
he might have been MVP of the combine.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, the amount of buzz that he had coming out. Membo was phenomenal. 4.91 at 332. Does make you think about Jordan Davis, who's there's an outlier in there, 4.78 at 341. Because Membo just came in second. And there's a bunch of 4.92, 4.93, they're right there. But Jordan Davis is 40 is absolutely absurd. But I'm with you on Membo. I love his. Did you hear him run?
What?
So you can find, if you go watch, if you Google Membo's 40 time, I'm not talking pounding you're hearing a cattle you should. He's he's yelling as he's running, grunting really, really loud. And the announcers are whoa, hey. Daniel Jeremiah called it a primal scream while he was running on the 40-yard dash.
Did you guys know Jalen Travis was that athletic?
No.
The Iowa State tackle? For that size, that's pretty. He verted 35 at basically 6'6", 340.
Yeah, he had the highest RAS score of any tackle that actually went through all the drills.
When my headphones fell off, did you mention Isaiah Naylor?
No, not on the show. Just before the show.
We were talking about him before the show.
That's probably the most interesting player of the whole combine for me, because if you recall, so he transferred before the 23 season to Texas from Wyoming. We knew he was a stud at Wyoming. Texas was given nothing but rave reviews about this guy, and then he blows his ACL. Was it fall camp or spring?
Fall camp.
Yeah, it was definitely
before. It was right before the season started.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
So it had to be fall camp, right? Or maybe like week one. But they were loving that kid in Austin. He gets hurt, then he transfers out to Nebraska. Had an okay season, not anything special, like an okay bounce back season. And then his numbers were just wild. I'm pulling them up here, but did you guys see these?
Yes.
I mean, this is for his size. So he was 76. So he's 6'4.2, 218, 9.5 hand, 34.4 arm, which is the biggest in the whole class. 151 10-yard split, 4.40 40, and he brought it 133. I don't know what his 3-cone and his shuttle are because he didn't run it, and that stuff matters too for a receiver. But I mean, this is a guy who was running like ahead of AD Mitchell, and Mitchell went late first or early second to the Colts. That's pretty good.
I mentioned this before the show. Like, you look at the RAS, the relative athletic scores, and right now Nayor is the highest ranked wide receiver at a 10.0, and they do like the comps on there, which compare what your measurements are and how you performed in these drills compared to guys in the past. The top 2 comps for Isaiah Nayor, according to RAS, are Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones.
Oh,
but as I also mentioned before the show, 3, 4, and 5 are Isaiah Weston, Miles Boykin, and Moritz Behringer. So just saying. But still, it's best to, anytime you get
Morris
compared
Behringer.
to, yeah, anytime you get compared to Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones in anything, that's not a bad place to be.
I know we're bouncing kind of all over the place, but Tom, I know you pitched this out on Twitter. The Shamar Stewart conversation is going to be a very interesting one for those who aren't aware. How is this going to divide the athletic data people and the people who watched college football as they discuss Texas A&M's defensive linemen?
Because when Shamar Stewart plays, you see the flashes of what he showed at the combine. You just don't see it on tape nearly enough. You don't see enough disruption. You certainly, in the counting stats, when you look at them, he doesn't, maybe it's like, what, how many sacks did he have in college?
4.5.
4.5. Yeah. So it's going to be a production versus a kind of traits thing that you see. There's always one player every year that does this. And Shamar Stewart this year, congratulations. You are that guy. I think he'll be a first-round pick. I think I've had him in the top half of both the first round and both of my mocks so far, because I think NFL teams will look at that and they will say, well, there are not many guys who are 6'5", 267 pounds who move like that. And if we get him into our room, we can develop him. Maybe they feel he didn't get developed at Texas A&M or well coached, because Texas A&M's had a lot of great athletes in the last few years under Jimbo Fisher and didn't really always translate to success on the field. But again, going back to the RAS comps, the top 3 for Shamar Stewart are Javon Curse, Myles Garrett.
Oh, he's good.
He went to Texas A&M too, by the way. Jadeveon Clowney. Then number 4 is Ade Aruna from Tulane. Sorry, I don't know who you are. And then number 5, Travon Walker. The last time we had a player of this kind of comparison in the scouts versus the data nerds was Travon Walker. He went number 1 overall. So we'll see.
I mean, this has kind of always been who he's been, though.
Like, even going back to the high school recruiting process,
he did have a nice senior year. Like, he had 14 sacks and a bunch of tackles. But the one thing I wish you could measure a little bit better is who was the guy who played at Arizona State and played forever with the Ravens? Suggs,
yeah.
Like, certain guys are just really good at reacting to the snap. Okay. And as a defensive lineman, your get off, you're not calling the snap count, right? You can anticipate it some, but you have to be able to react to the ball. There are certain guys who don't run as well, but they're like, whenever their brain tells their legs to fire, it's just a little bit quicker. And that matters a whole lot. Like, I don't think he plays to these times all the time. You could also tell me that A&M didn't use him correctly at times because they had him playing a lot more inside in an odd front type thing, which honestly, like, I don't know if that's a total misuse. I don't want to say like they screwed that up. He's super long. I don't think he has tremendous reactive quickness. I think he has great measurable skills in some of these drills, but he has always been a combine freak, like always. And like, I was just out at Miami Under Armour yesterday. I can remember very clearly, like 4 years ago, he was there. His testing numbers were nuts. But also, I think he was fairly raw in high school. There's a real chance that, like, I would take him in the first round because I think the upside is worth it to see if I can unlock it. But it's an upside play. I don't think he's an instant impact guy.
Yeah, somebody will fall in love with him.
Yeah.
It only takes one.